Here we go! U.S. troops might be in danger. Why is the military trying to hide it? Smoke rises from a Kenyan military outpost. January 5th, 2020. Look at that. Look at that. Interesting. It was a brazen assault that put the extreme vulnerability of American military bases in Africa on full display. On January 5th, 2020, members of the terrorist group Al-Shabaab attacked a longtime American outpost in Kenya, and when it was all over, 3 Americans were dead, 2 others were wounded, 6 aircraft had been wrecked, a fuel storage area had been destroyed, and the airfield, which had been considered a safe area for U.S. troops, was on fire and out of commission. At the beginning of the attack, 2 U.S. contractors were taxiing their surveillance plane on the tarmac when a rocket-propelled grenade came streaking toward them. The assault was such a surprise that it took an hour for American troops to respond, and as many as 8 hours to evacuate a private contractor that sustained injuries 1,500 miles away to a military hospital in Djibouti. Shortly after the assault, reports also emerged that many Kenyan soldiers assigned to protect the Manda Bay outpost fled and hid until the fighting was over. The military's Africa Command, or AFRICOM, refused to respond to Vice News about these allegations. Months later, the United States military is still conducting an investigation into the attack. Personnel have been tight-lipped on the reasons why Al-Shabaab, an East African terrorist organization affiliated with Al-Qaeda, was able to deal the U.S. such a heavy blow, but one fact is clear. Measures to secure the base, also known as force protection, failed spectacularly. Now, here's the thing. We do have all these bases. We have a ton of bases all over Africa. This in of itself is not really surprising. We have military bases all over the world, after all. But the issue is that we have military bases stationed in Africa specifically so that we can project our military power to keep these countries in line, to enforce our material interests upon them, you know? This is, yeah, exactly, Nerdgerm. This is imperialism, or probably more accurately, like neo-imperialism, because we're not exactly occupying these countries. We're more just heavily implying that they should do a lot of things. Otherwise, we might just, you know, sit back and take the day off. Hey, cannolis! Be a shame if someone messed up your country. Hey! Yeah, exactly. We picked up where the old British Empire left off and where a lot of the European empires left off as well. And so now it's largely the United States is still heavily involved in Africa, and you'll also get, well, now you get a lot of Chinese involvement in Africa, and the Chinese involvement and their methods of inducing imperial control are much more attractive than the United States is. For example, China will go in and heavily invest in building infrastructure for these countries. And these are things that are intended to build up African nations and provide them with tools going forward, and they're desperately needed sorts of renovations and investments. These are the kinds of things that in like 30 years are going to pay off very well for China. Our methods are much more short-term. And I'm not saying that China is good either, because imperialism is still bad, even if it has a somewhat beneficial relationship with its targeted countries, right? It's still bad, but at least with China's brand of imperialism, they're getting something a little bit more tangible out of it. So let's go into a little bit more information here. What's going on with these military bases, eh? 2 sets of exclusive, formerly secret AFRICOM documents obtained by Vice News show that as many as 20 American outposts across Africa may be in similar danger of the type of debacle that occurred at Manda Bay. These files also suggest that Africa Command has taken steps to obscure information about the sites where local forces provided protection. Another batch of exclusive documents also reveals that the Manda Bay attack occurred not long after a sweeping security upgrade of the outpost, calling into question the efficacy of measures to protect that base and the safety of the U.S. personnel stationed elsewhere on the continent. It's highly likely that another attack like this will happen again somewhere in Africa, retired Brigadier General Donald Bloduk? What? What kind of a name is that? Who served at U.S. Africa Command from 2013 to 2015, and then spearheaded Special Operations Command Africa until 2017, told Vice News. What's going on in Africa in terms of attacks on U.S. forces is a classic example of poor policy, poor strategy, and poor operational approach that endangers the safety and security of our service members. Gee, that's so surprising under a Trump administration. I never would have thought that we would have poor policy, poor strategy, and poor operational approach underneath the Trump administration. Wow. Wowee. I am shocked and chagrined. Africa Command still refuses to say if steps have been taken to remedy any existing security gaps, and provided boilerplate responses to Vice News about security upgrades at Manda Bay, potential adjustments to force protection at other bases, and whether local forces were still providing critical security at most U.S. outposts in Africa. Force protection is one of the command's most important priorities, spokesman John Manley told Vice News. We continuously assess force protection and security measures and make adjustments as necessary across the continent. Now, I would imagine... It's weird to me, by the way, that we talk so much about, we beat Al-Qaeda, we won the war on terror. But here's the thing, and this attack by Al-Shabaab is a perfect example of what I'm talking about here. When we go into other countries and bomb them or otherwise, attack them in the name of fighting terrorism, we actually breed more terrorists. Like that's how this works. Like if you blow up people indiscriminately and wind up blowing up civilians, you're going to create way more terrorists than if you had just sat back and done counter spy operations, been a little bit more quiet about it. Lately, Donald Trump has been launching more drone strikes than even President Obama, and Obama was known for how many drone strikes he dropped, right? Welcome back, Grady. So the issue is that those types of policies, the bombing, it just creates more of these terrorists for us, which then perpetuates an eternal war mentality in the United States, which isn't healthy for our economy. It isn't healthy for our citizens. It isn't healthy for really anyone involved. And as we can see from this story, it puts our soldiers in danger as well, even if they are in places that we consider relatively peaceful, such as the Manda Bay compound. Let's see. While Manley declined to name locations or even provide a simple count of other bases where foreign forces provide security for U.S. troops, formerly secret 2019 AFRICOM planning documents reveal that local forces provided some or all of the force protection function at 20 U.S. bases across the continent. This means that Americans at the majority of U.S. military sites in Africa may be vulnerable to the security breakdowns that led to the deaths at Manda Bay. And so this makes it a bit of an issue here, because what this essentially means is that all of our compounds in Africa, or the majority of our compounds in Africa, are being protected by forces that are not U.S. soldiers, meaning that they are either contractors or they are, to some extent, local forces that have been working with the U.S. military in some capacity, meaning that they don't necessarily have a ton of investment in protecting U.S. compounds, right? Especially when those very U.S. compounds are literally there to enforce foreign, foreign shakedowns of their government. There's not a whole lot of incentive there if you're a homegrown soldier to protect the forces of the Imperium. Um, so let's see. Manley told Vice News that AFRICOM does not view force protection by local troops as a danger, but U.S. military history is replete with examples of outsourced security leading to the deaths of Americans. In 1965, an attack on an airfield in Pleiku, South Vietnam, whose perimeter was primarily defended by local forces, killed 9 U.S. troops, wounded another 128, and destroyed 122 aircraft. In October 2000, while refueling at a port primarily defended by Yemeni forces, the USS Cole was attacked by Al-Qaeda militants, resulting in the deaths of 17 American sailors. In 2012, Taliban forces penetrated Camp Bastion in Afghanistan, which was guarded by Tongan troops, killing 2 Marines and destroying 6 aircraft. An investigation led to the firing of 2 generals in a stark pronouncement by the Marine Corps Commandant General James Amos. Marines can never place complete reliance for their own safety in the hands of another force. So basically, like, these... can we watch a video on why 3-year-olds should own AK-47s? I would be open to that, but also I have other videos we're going to watch today. So basically, yeah, we're going over this history. Not only does the policy, of putting military bases in the hands and protection of foreign forces tend to put our own soldiers at risk. Our own military recognizes that, we shouldn't be doing that. And yet, we're doing it. So I think that should lead us to question, why are we doing that? By the way, I would hazard a guess that, if we were to dig into this story, eventually we would find that there is some involvement by, I believe it's called, Constellation now, but the company formerly best known as Blackwater. I think they also were called Z Academy, XE. But I would bet my bootstraps that the bootstraps that I desperately need to use to pull myself out of poverty, that we would find them somewhere in this mess. Another article in the 2019 follow-up anthology published by the Air Force's Air University Press warned that a host nation force is unlikely to replicate the standard of U.S. forces in terms of ensuring appropriate levels of base security. Okay, I'm not super interested in, base security issues anymore. We've already established that. U.S. forces have taken part in combat in at least 13 African nations over the last decade. 16 bases where the host nation contributes to or provides the entirety of the force of protection, protective function, are in the same countries, including Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Kenya, Libya, Niger, Somalia, and Tunisia. The attack on Manda Bay isn't surprising, says Bolduc, noting that there is a high risk of another attack like Manda Bay in the future, but that dangers aren't new and echo similar issues when he took command of SOCAFRICA, a subcommand of U.S. Special Operations Command under the operational control of AFRICOM, which oversees elite American military commandos on the continent. Okay, talking about investment. The base was indeed under-resourced. In the wake of the Al-Shabaab assault, about 120 infantrymen from the 101st Airborne Division were rushed to the base, and according to President Donald Trump, unspecified equipment was also deployed to Kenya to increase force protection measures. Okay. Refused to answer questions about current troop levels or if steps were actually taken to increase security at the base. Interesting. drafted 1 year and 3 months prior to the Al-Shabaab attack on Manda Bay, inexplicably do not list that airfield as one of the U.S. outposts where local forces provide security. Interesting. The only facility in Kenya protected by local troops, according to the documents, is located in Mombasa, a coastal city about 200 miles from Manda Bay. So it seems like a lot of these outposts don't necessarily are, in some degree, off the books as far as like what they are projecting to the public about them. So we're not getting information about how many troops are stationed at each one. We're not getting correct information about which of these places are adequately protected by U.S. troops. We're not getting, or I guess in some cases, we're getting outright falsehoods about which ones are being properly protected. And we're getting no confirmation that security upgrades have been incoming even after attacks in different bases. So this is all pretty interesting stuff. The dangers were no secret, he explained. We know that those local forces are, in the event of an attack, probably going to run. We know that there's a lot of corruption, so they may be paid off to run, he said. So I made sure that we had adequate force structure there to protect it. I assumed there were changes made. According to documents obtained by Vice News, upgrades to Manda Bay's security were made prior to the attack. Exclusive 2018 Air Force documents reveal that there already had been a sweeping upgrade of force protection at Manda Bay between June 2017 and June 2018. The partially redacted documents produced by the 449th Air Expeditionary Group refer to the construction of a new defensive perimeter, the acquisition of an unspecified capability to provide security, and protect $142 million in air assets then located at the base. The files also note that during the same time span, Colonel Sean Cochran, then the commander of the 449th Air Expeditionary Group, championed a major shift in East Africa's decade-old personnel recovery posture, leading to a 75% decrease in the time between an alert about injured personnel and the time that help arrives. Files say that these changes were ultimately mitigating risk to the United States and partner nation forces. Interesting. Oh, in the command's formerly secret 2020 planning documents, AFRICOM redacted all material relating to force protection by local troops, making it impossible to know which bases continue to rely on resident troops for the security of U.S. forces this year. Okay, so yeah, I'm getting real sus about this, specifically because here. Now, I fully recognize that I'm going out on a limb here. Let me take a look at something though. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, just a second here. Now, I don't have any hard evidence here that Eric Prince is at all involved in any of these African military outposts. However, the way that these documents have all redacted which outposts are using, what are my thoughts on Biden's new porno? As far as I know, Biden doesn't appear in pornography. Let's see, Eric Prince's Private Wars. But as far as I know here, Eric Prince, for those of you who don't know, is the founder and main, I guess, money bag behind Blackwater, a renowned and odious and possibly the world's largest military contractor, private military contractor, mercenary company, if you would prefer. Um, and he essentially has been going around the world for the past decade or so, ever since war broke out in the Middle East. So maybe even more than the past decade, and shopping around his private mercenary corporation under a variety of different names. I also haven't seen. Yes, this is the Blackwater guy. I haven't seen Borat 2 yet. I'll get to it though. I'll get to it. Promise. So in this story, we're seeing a lot of these outposts being listed off the books. We're not seeing whether they are being protected by local troops. However, earlier in this article, they talk about private military or military contractors. So it makes me wonder to what extent those private military contractors are being used in Africa, and whether there is any relationship with Eric Prince's mercenary company. Now, part of the reason I ask this is that Eric Prince is the brother of Betsy DeVos. He has a tie directly into the Trump administration. He's also a billionaire, so he has very deep pockets. And the other thing is that he had some involvement in the attempt to run a coup in Venezuela, the failed coup. I don't know exactly to what extent he was involved in that either. It's a little bit shady. But we do know that he went to Venezuela to talk to like Juan Guaido's people to see if they could do a little something something, you know. So it's not at all weird. Yeah, I do want to talk about it, but I don't want to get too far derailed, nerd germ. Essentially, the attempted mercenary coup in Venezuela that did happen was so hilarious, like so hilariously bad that literally the insurgents just gave up and like wandered out of the woods and were like, "Yeah, it's just a bad idea. We're sorry." But I'm doing all right, Grady. I'm doing all right. I'm just talking about Eric Prince and mercenary contractors. But yeah, Blackwater founder wants to bring back his company's glory days, and he's campaigning for Donald Trump's help to do it. But he's haunted by the past failures and is facing questions about a mercenary fiasco in Libya. So I think you guys really need to understand that wherever this guy goes with his military operations, he spreads death and awful like scandals. For a while, he was training police officers with his mercenaries. For a while, he was training, I believe, the Saudi Arabian military. And I know that he at one point moved his operation to Africa to try and build up some sort of air force that he could shop around the world with his mercenaries. And essentially what Blackwater will do, like the recruitment tactic, is to go into poor South American countries and basically be like, hey, you want to be a soldier and see the world? Well, just sign up with Blackwater. We'll give you 3 square meals and a really good paycheck. And people are like, well, this will help me escape my life of poverty, so I guess I'll give it a shot. And then they ship those people out to another country and then don't pay them as much as they promised, don't give them the other benefits that they promised, and basically say, well, if you want to go home, you can, but you got to pay your own way. We're not gonna fly you back, obviously. And so, like, a lot of these people in Blackwater are basically there against their will, these mercenaries bumble their way through encounter after encounter, causing scandal after scandal, causing millions of dollars in irreparable damage that they never pay. It's a thing. It's a thing. All right. This is what a lot of them do. Here, we'll look at this. By June 18th, 2019, the operation named Project Opus was in the final stages of planning as mercenaries and their backers attempted to assemble the equipment Haftar had been promised. But they hit a snag when the Kingdom of Jordan refused to sell military helicopters to the group. The mercenaries' cover story was that they were headed to Libya to support energy development projects. But Jordanian military officials had grown suspicious because of the equipment being stockpiled. Professional mercenaries pride themselves on discretion, but this group's tradecraft was laughable. A former Australian Air Force pilot sent to Jordan to inspect the helicopters identified himself as Gene Reinach. The code name was a nod to Gene Ryak, the fictional arms dealer turned heroin smuggler in Air America, a film about private CIA aviation contractors during the Vietnam War. Think of a spy with the cover name James Bond. Reinach, whose real name is Christian Serge Durant. That's a way better name. Just go with your actual name, dude. Suggested to Jordanian officials that he had clearances from everywhere, effectively attempting to bluff them into believing he had the approval of US CIA. Suspicious Jordanian officials dug deeper and found that the operation was a private one that no country had officially sanctioned, and the sale never went through. This is, by the way, like an example of how they bungle everything, and it would be very, very funny if they didn't also kill people. Yeah, Blackwater is essentially who the bad guys hire as goons, and like the United States military hired them as goons during the war in Iraq. So, I mean, tells you a lot about our role in Iraq, right? Oh man. Why isn't slash Mona command? Why would it be a command? Also, I don't know how to implement commands. I'm sorry, friend. Okay. Lacking the Jordanian choppers, the mercenaries and their backers scrambled to find replacements, which included trying to buy equipment from private sources. Opus are now executing their contingency plan for non-government support, a member of Project Opus wrote in June 18th of 2019. Communique, seen by Rolling Stone, this places considerable legal risk on Opus and is beyond the scope of the agreed contract. The scramble for new aircraft proved at least partially unsuccessful, and when the mercenaries arrived in Libya, they failed to deliver the military equipment their contract called for. Haftar was furious. The mercenaries, a team of a dozen South Africans, 5 Brits, 2 Australians, and 1 American, feared for their lives and fled the country, hopping into inflatable speedboats for a desperate 18-hour, 350-mile journey across the Mediterranean to Malta. Police detained them on arrival. Holy shit. Oh, the failed Project Opus has since become a subject of UN investigation, which includes a detailed and damning portrait of a 61-page report issued in June. This account of the failed operation in Libya is based on that report which Rolling Stone obtained. Oh, there's so much more. There's so much more, guys. I'm not gonna go through this entire thing, but I just need you to know, these people are real dipshits. They're really dumb. And yet, they're empowered because a billionaire CEO just decided to, give these kids guns and send them into the Middle East so they can go and kill, Muslims. And if that sounds like hyperbole, that's literally what Prince wants to do. He sees himself as a modern Christian crusader. He has literally termed his mercenary crews as crusaders. So he's just very much in favor of sending his mercenaries into the Middle East to kill people. It doesn't matter if they're civilians. Doesn't matter if they're soldiers. That's his entire thing right there. All right, going back to this. Okay. Yeah, it would be inappropriate for me to speculate on the reasons why sections were redacted beyond established law, AFRICOM's John Manley told Vice News. It's pretty obvious why they did it. We're at these places where troops are at risk, but they don't want you to know about it, and if they had the right security, they would want to talk about it. That says a lot, Bulldog. Bulldog! said to Vice News after reviewing the 2019 and 2020 AFRICOM documents. It's pretty clear that they don't want Congress or the American people asking questions about it. Dang, look at this nice redaction here. Look at these just giant blank spaces. After 4 Americans, 2 diplomats, 2 CIA contractors were killed by militants in Benghazi, Libya in 2012, there were 10 investigations, 33 congressional hearings, and a great furor over the security failures that led to their deaths. Since the January attack on Manda Bay, there has not been a Benghazi-like outcry over the fact that Kenyan forces reportedly fled from the battle and failed to stop al-Shabaab from penetrating the airfield. Pretty weird, huh? Pretty weird. Pretty weird that, for some reason, Benghazi got 10 investigations and 33 congressional hearings, and yet we have an equivalent breach of security in Kenya at a Kenyan military outpost. We don't hear a word. We don't hear anything about it. In fact, information that we try and obtain after the fact just gets stonewalled behind redactions. Pretty strange that Republicans aren't frothing at the mouth, demanding to know what happened at Manda Bay. Pretty strange. I wonder why that might be. I wonder if the Benghazi investigations were all just political stunts, using the deaths of Americans to try and make political points. And didn't actually give a shit about the safety of Americans. Pretty weird. I don't know. What do you guys think happened there? Earlier this year, however, members of the House and Senate Armed Services Committee questioned AFRICOM Commander Army General Stephen Townsend about the attack on Manda Bay. I think it is self-obvious we were not as prepared there in Manda Bay as we needed to be. Townsend said to the Senate Armed Services Committee, not mentioning the previous security upgrades that had been made to Manda Bay Base during the 2017 and 2018 years. Al-Shabaab managed to penetrate onto that airfield. They were able to get access to the airfield, killed 3 Americans, destroyed 6 aircraft there, so we weren't as prepared, and we're digging into that to find out why that's the case. Throughout their questioning, the committee did not ask about any ongoing security risks to American bases posed by a reliance on local forces. Senator Martha McSally, a Republican lawmaker from Arizona and 26-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force, questioned Townsend about the surprisingly sparse security at the Kenyan base and steps taken to make sure that others are not going to be in a similar risk. But when the AFRICOM chief confined his answers to actions taken at Manda Bay, she asked no follow-ups about the broader issue of base security on the continent. McSally, who once oversaw the planning of counterterrorism operations in Africa, later issued a press release in which she stressed the need to improve security of U.S. assets in Africa, but her staff said she was unaware of the many other bases that might be as vulnerable as Manda Bay due to a reliance on local forces for force protection. The senator was never made aware of the aforementioned dangers you describe, Amy Lawrence, her communications director, told Vice News. And then McSally's office ignored repeated inquiries from Vice News for further comment. Interesting. Congressmember Karen Bass, a Democrat from California and chair... Why is my mouse not working? There we go. From California and chair of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, and Global Human Rights and International Organizations, similarly failed to respond to questions about the potential vulnerabilities faced by U.S. forces across the continent. The Congresswoman has previously supported calls for congressional investigations into these matters and all military activity across Africa in order to protect the lives of American citizens and their African counterparts. Staff director of the subcommittee in an emailed statement on behalf of Bass. We viewed and the Kenyans viewed Manda Bay as a safe area, Townsend told the senators in January. I'm looking forward with a clear eye at every location in Africa now. To be certain, Benghazi and Manda Bay are far from the only attacks targeting Americans in Africa. The number of casualties from attacks on Americans by militants in Africa under Trump administration is at least 5 times greater than the death toll at Benghazi, according to a tally drawn from press reports. Strange. Yet, despite calls for congressional investigations, we're not getting investigations into a death toll in Africa by foreign militants equal to 5 times that of Benghazi. Why haven't there been 5 times as many investigations into these attacks? I wonder why. I wonder what the roadblock is when the Democrat here is calling for congressional investigations, but the Republican on the committee is just asking one question and no follow-ups and isn't likewise calling for investigations. Strange. Curious, I say. I would hazard a guess that the reason that we're not getting these investigations, by the way, is that the Republican Senate does not want to allow such investigations to take place. Why that might be? Probably because it would make A, Donald Trump look really bad, B, might shed some light on some seedy activity going on in Africa that would be embarrassing to the United States and or betray certain commercial concerns that they have. Yeah, these include the 2017 ambush in Niger by the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara that left 6 U.S. soldiers dead or wounded, and an attack by al-Shabaab in Somalia just last month that injured a U.S. service member. Okay. Yeah, AFRICOM is pushing for more drone strikes. They've conducted 63 declared air attacks on Somalia. And it has already conducted at least 47 strikes in neighboring Somalia this year. Interesting. Yeah, expanding America's drone war would likely entail expanding intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities, meaning even more contractors. And the Americans who bore the brunt of the attack at Manda Bay, placing them in harm's way. Yeah, I mean, guys, this is all bad stuff. This is all stuff that is awful, and this is like a symptom of our larger role in the world as an imperial power. I would suggest maybe it would be good if we rolled back some of these outposts. If we, instead of us managing these outposts, we handed them over to local forces. And I would say if we're going to be engaging in the kind of imperialism that the United States has historically been engaging in, I would say that maybe we should update with the times and emulate China's model to put money into Africa to build up productive, wealthy nations in the future who can likewise return the favor down the road. That's basically what I would say we should do. All of this stuff, we don't need to do all this. There's no reason for us to be at a military base conducting drone strikes on Somalia. Why are we doing that? Why aren't Somalia's neighbors handling that? I realize to a certain extent that at this point, like, the American empire is just ingrained in the society of many other foreign countries, but we really don't need to be in these other places. Just this one base that no one has ever heard of had $142 million in, like, military equipment. And that's just, like, a small portion of that small outpost's budget. We could be spending that money on people at home. Do you have any idea what $142 million could do? Why is that sitting over in Kenya? Why? There's no compelling reason for it to be there other than to enforce some sort of empire. I wonder if we gave or directed that money towards building infrastructure in these African nations, if that would buy us more goodwill than having some piece of military equipment that just gets blown up by, the average group of jihadis. You know, like, really makes you think. Really makes you think.